So often I learn lessons from nature, and yesterday was just one of those experiences. And I bring that up today because we're going to be talking about the divine feminine, and we talk about nature as Mother Nature. So I was thinking about this a lot since last week was Mother's Day. I was thinking about the feminine energy that we all share, and it's a part of our world. And all the things that means to me. And I was thinking about my own mother and what she represents, but also just in general what mothers represent. And I love today that we have all this life in multiple stages. We got everything from in utero to newly born to young people, and there were quite a few kids here today. It was great, and they were actively doing their thing while we're doing our chanting. They're, celebrating life in their own way. And, teenagers and other young people, all the way up to older people. So I think that's really great that we have all these stages of life that we're celebrating today. So when I think about this divine feminine energy, I think about sustenance, I think about nourishment and abundance. I think about creation and about the, cycle of birth and death and rebirth that always is happening within all of us as we create new life, as we move on to another life. And the cycles of the season, of course, represent that for us really beautifully. So I think about fertility. I think about compassion and nurturing, and we see that here today. We see her, here so she can hear this talk and be a part of it all, but also caring for her child at the same time. It's a beautiful thing. And I think about how all of that nurturing leads to a beautiful kind of mercy and acceptance and grace. So, of course, we all have that within us. Some of us have it in a stronger way than others. And, female hormones, kick in when our babies are born. And in fact, they say, like E.T., they make those things look like babies because it does something to us all. We have this response of, oh my gosh, I love that creature if the face looks like a baby. So it's a very natural thing that we, whether we're male or female, this thing kicks in when there's a baby around that we're like, oh, we got to take care of the little ones. So this, actually, when I was thinking about all these things, I thought about how it coincided with a talk that I gave last October here called Breathe, Live, Love, which I may have told you at the time. I've been working towards finding a kind of overall cap for everything that I do. And so that's going to be, I haven't launched it yet, but it's going to be the name of my new business, Breathe, Live, Love. Because for me, it incorporates everything that I do and really all of life. So when I think about breathing in, it's that sustenance and nourishment part. It's the way we take in everything, whether it's actual food or oxygen, prana, the life force energy, or our experiences, whatever we're learning in the world. That's also part of our nourishment. So we breathe that in. And the live piece for me is the part that's the spaces in between. So I think it was John Lennon who said, life is what happens while you're waiting for something to happen, or something. I probably didn't get that quite right, but something like that. And it's really true that life happens in those spaces in between. They also say that that's where stillness is. So that kind of suspension, where everything, I think of it like a soup too, where the soup is cooking. We've taken in all these experiences, and now it's going to be forming into something within us. So sometimes in our life, we've had experiences, or maybe we feel like we failed, or something didn't quite work out, or we wasted time, when in fact, that can't be true, because those experiences are teaching us, no matter what they are. No matter what our approach was to it, it's all we could do at that time. For whatever reason, we made those choices. And that's teaching us and part of our nourishment and part of our sustenance. And then, once that's cooked in there, we're ready to exhale and to offer it to the world. So once we've gotten to a place where we've taken in what we need and then let it stir within us, we can send it out to the world in loving service. So this, of course, isn't a one-time thing. It's not like we reach a certain age, we've gained all the experience we need, now we're going to let it cook, now we're going to offer it. It's constantly ongoing. We go through these cycles. And, it's that kind of, I guess it's more like this. We're gaining more experience all the time and offering in a deeper way as we move through life. So I wanted to look at some mother figures today and how those relate to to all of this. So if we think about sustenance and nourishment, that's where I think about the earth. And it's very interesting to me that we call the earth Mother Earth. We don't say Father Earth. We say Father Sky for whatever reason. We say Mother Earth, and we say Mother Nature. And of course, there are many, many different religions around the world, and traditionally, a lot of indigenous cultures that celebrated those aspects of nature as a kind of deities, sun god and moon goddess, and all different. Native American spirituality, of course, focuses a lot on our brothers that are even the rocks and the stones and the trees and all of the animals, and how they're there, here to teach us something. And I know I learn a lot from nature at a lot of different times. I learn things about boundaries. I learn things about growth. I learn things about letting go. It's all there for us to see in nature. And I find, too, that nature teaches us about interconnection. And from the tradition that I follow, yoga, that's where we talk about how the breath is connecting us to everybody else. We're constantly taking in what other people have exhaled, inhaling it, and then offering it back into the world. It's the easiest way to see that. Of course, we do that with food, too. When we're taking in food, we're taking in something that has been something else somewhere. And I'm reading this beautiful book by Thich Nhat Hanh, Pieces Every Step. And he talks about that, how everything is in everything. And we might see a flower and how beautiful a flower is, but a good gardener knows that that flower will soon become garbage, and that the garbage will become a flower. So in this beautiful flower is also waste, what we would call waste and garbage. And in the garbage is also the flower. So I wanted to read this passage from this book. It's not the flower passage, but it's another one. It's actually talking about the paper that I'm reading from. If you're a poet, you will see clearly that there is a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. Without a cloud, there will be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. The cloud is essential for the paper to exist. So we can say that the cloud and the paper are. Interbeing is a word that is not in the dictionary yet. But if we combine the prefix inter and the verb to be, we have a new verb, interbe. If we look into this sheet of paper even more deeply, we can see the sunshine in it. Without sunshine, the forest cannot grow. In fact, nothing can grow without sunshine. And so we know that the sunshine is also in this sheet of paper. The paper and the sunshine are. And if we continue to look, we can see the logger who cut the tree and brought it to the mill to be transformed into paper. And when we see wheat, we know that the logger cannot exist without his daily bread. And therefore the wheat that became his bread is also in this sheet of paper. The logger's father and mother are in here too. When we look in this way, we see that without all these things, this sheet of paper cannot exist. Isn't that beautiful? And I actually went at Unity on the Plaza to a mindfulness eating workshop, I guess it was, with, it wasn't with Thich Nhat Hanh, but it was with one of his followers, or he was a monk, so who had been trained by Thich Nhat Hanh. And he had us eat a raisin. We had 2 raisins each. So I think we ate the first one, just ate it. And then he had us take the raisin and actually take some time to look at the raisin. And then when we ate the raisin, we ate it really, really slowly till it actually kind of dissolved in our mouth. But I wasn't trying to think of anything really. I was just following his instructions. But literally when I was looking at the raisin, I saw everything. I saw the field where the raisin grew and the people that were working on, and it wasn't like my mind was concocting this. So I think this is what he's talking about here. If we really look closely, so I recommend trying that at some point, whether it's with food or with something else. Just really take some time to look at something, maybe something from nature. I think it's a little easier than something inanimate, but everything is within everything. And I think this divine feminine is the piece that brings that all together for us. And of course they've shown, in fact I have my own little theory about male, female, are we equal or are we not equal? In my own mind we're different but equal. And I think in some ways, we play very important, not that of course there's a spectrum, everybody has all of this within them, but I really think in so many ways women are about the connections between us. Women are the fabric. we are constantly trying to get people to agree and to let's come to some kind of agreement here. And the men, a lot of times, are more about the protection. So, and unfortunately, a lot of times, especially if your life is being threatened, you can't be thinking about your connection to this other person while you're trying to connect your village, your wife, your family, your town, whatever. And so they have an ability to disconnect, which often frustrates us as women, doesn't it? But it's really, really important for that particular aspect. And both of those things are really essential for our survival. We need to be connected and to know that we're connected and to be interwoven. But we also, there are times when we need to be defended from something. So I think that would help us all, if we can start to see those things that maybe frustrate us. I'm sure the opposite is true for the men too, that sometimes we're frustrated by the women always trying to, change us to something else and bring us together when we just rather be left alone. But both of these aspects are so important for us. And if we can see that, we can start to see also how we are in every other person. So, of course, there's the famous goddesses from Greek and Roman culture, Gaia or Terra, which Terra means earth, and Gaia also means earth, which is the personification of earth and nature and creation, the great mother of all, the primal mother goddess, creator and giver of birth, not just to people, but to the earth and to all of the universe. So very, very powerful, this ability to create life and to give birth. And, of course, there was Isis worship in the goddess cultures. That was those cultures were very female-driven, and Isis was actually the first daughter of Geb, the god of the earth, and Nut, the goddess of the sky. So I just learned that. I didn't know that. So she's this creation that brought earth and sky together. And she was worshipped as the ideal mother and wife, as well as the patroness of nature and magic. And that's an important element. A lot of times, and I'm going to be doing some reading from this other book, Women in Praise of the Sacred. And it's really interesting to me, some of these readings that I'm going to be reading from here are so, they're actually Christian mystics, but they're so reminiscent of both nature worship as well as, Eastern traditions where a lot of, contradiction, kind of Zen. So that was very interesting to me too, that these female Christian mystics, connected the different world religions together. So the first one I'm going to read from here is called The Thunder, Perfect Mind, and it's actually from the Gnostic Gospels. This is a very unusual text, actually. It appears to have been derived from the Isis tradition and was most likely written by a female. It's very akin to certain passages in the Bible in which a female wisdom figure speaks, and also akin to certain passages in Tibetan Buddhism, Taoism, Japanese Zen, and elsewhere. So in these readings, you'll find what they call the expression of the impossible, which is that magical element. So I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's quite long, but I'll read some of it. Sent from the power, I have come to those who reflect upon me, and I have been found among those who seek me. Look upon me, you who meditate, and hearers, hear. Whoever is waiting for me, take me into yourselves. Do not drive me out of your eyes, or out of your voice, or out of your ears. Observe. Do not forget who I am. For I am the first and the last. I am the honored one and the scorned. I am the whore and the holy one. I am the wife and the virgin. I am the mother, the daughter, and every part of both. I am the barren one who has borne many sons. I am she whose wedding is great, and I have not accepted a husband. I am the midwife and the childless one, the easing of my own labor. I am the bride and the bridegroom, and my husband is my father, and I am the mother of my father and the sister of my husband. My husband is my child. I am the incomprehensible silence and the memory that will not be forgotten. I am the voice whose sound is everywhere, and the speech that appears in many forms. I am the utterance of my own name. Give heed then, you hearers, and you also, angels and those who have been sent, and you spirits risen now from the dead. I am the one who alone exists. There is no one to judge me. For though there is much sweetness in passionate life, in transient pleasure, finally soberness comes, and people flee to their place of rest. There they will find me and live and not die again. A lot of stuff contained in there, right? a lot about passion and love, and it's kind of Rumi-esque, but it's also I am the Alpha and the Omega, and this contradiction, and I am the one, like we say in Unity. There is no other. So really, really beautiful. So that brings me to the second word, the word live, and that whole idea of birth and rebirth and creation. About how life happens in those spaces in between, the moments between our highs and our lows. We tend to focus on the lows or the highs and want them to either be gone or stay forever, when really it's those things in between that make a difference. It's about that becoming. It's not like we're going to get to a certain place and stay there, because once we attain a certain goal or acquisition, we're just going to want something else or to be something else. So it's really about this becoming whatever it is that we're hoping to be, about the journey, and about forever being renewed, reborn, and transforming. So I think here about Mother Mary and all that she represents. And of course, how that whole kind of cult of Mother Mary, I think, was cultivated intentionally to help those who were goddess worshipers and Isis followers, etc., to be more comfortable with the Christian religion. That's a common kind of idea. It gave a female face to the Christian discussion of the divine. And it helped everyone just kind of round things out a bit. And I was thinking, I've never had this thought before, but when I was thinking about the whole divine mother thing and Mother Mary, I never really cared much if she's a virgin or not in actuality. That's a big discussion. You've got to decide if she's actually a virgin. But I was thinking about it the other day, and I thought, well, actually, having the story with her being a virgin is pretty cool, because it takes the emphasis away from her relationship with Joseph or whoever it was that she might have been with, and puts the focus on her co-creating with God. So nothing other than this mother figure, female figure, and God created the Son of God. So that's pretty powerful, and gives, for me anyway, a very different idea of the significance of that virgin birth, whether it's true or not. The story, having that element, is really important, because it shows all of us that we have this power to co-create with God without anything else or another person in the picture. So I found this beautiful passage from a Sufi master, really, really beautiful, that I thought kind of shared this whole idea and let us see the Virgin Mary in a different way. Your body is the Virgin Mary. The Spirit is Christ, the Word that was conveyed through Gabriel, the eternal messenger. The breath is the breath of the mercy of God, and it is that breath that quickens the soul. There are many paths to God, but the way of Mary is the sweetest and most gentle. If you can melt into Mary, the matrix, the blueprint of life, the Divine Mother, you will be formed and shaped in Christ and Christ in you. And thus, through the breath of God's mercy, you will come into being and know God. For it is the breath of mercy that bestows being. Every moment God appears in living form. So I love, too, that he talks about the body in this particular passage. And the body, too, is part of nature, right? And here to teach us so many things. I actually recently have been having this knee issue where my knee will just suddenly, I can't bend it. It's very painful. So it feels like maybe a tendon is out of place or something. And it will just happen randomly as I'm walking around. And then half an hour or 8 hours later, it will randomly go away. So I'm like, whoa, what is this about? It's very interesting. I always think my body is, showing me something. And so first I was like, oh, it's about release, because something is caught and tight and I can't bend. It makes me inflexible. And then when it releases, then I can release. So I'm like, oh, I need to be releasing some things, which is the truth. I won't share that all with you right now, but there are many things that I've been, kind of dealing with that I just need to let go of. And then I had a yoga class yesterday, a very careful, slow yoga class. I was really tending to my knee. And my yoga teacher, who is an amazing healer, afterwards just gave me some energy. And she said, and I hadn't told her what I thought it was about. She said, Cindy, you're just tired. Your knee is tired. and it's been supporting you all this time. And I just burst into tears. I was like, I am so exhausted. I feel great today. The storm helped me sleep. But also just having that release yesterday, was really, really powerful. And then this morning, when it's out of place, and even just in general, I've been walking very carefully and moving slower. And I was like, oh, and it's also here to teach me to slow down. I've been moving very quickly, working very, very hard, and I just need to be more mindful and move more slowly. So one little thing in my body is teaching me these huge, big lessons. So it's another place where nature can really, really teach us a lot of things if we'll pay attention. So this feminine energy is often referred to as Sophia or wisdom. And one of my favorite yogis, Yogananda, calls it God's intelligent cosmic vibration. That's his translation of that wisdom or Sophia. So again, I turned to this book, and this time it's Hildegard of Bingen, who is a very, very, probably the most famous Christian mystic of the Middle Ages. She lived from 1098 to 1179. She was an abbess of a Benedictine community and had clairvoyance from the time she was a little girl, and saw a lot of these visions and stuff, which she didn't reveal right away, but at some point, a voice spoke to her and said she needed to reveal these visions. So she described her visual field as having contained at all times a backdrop of radiance upon which her visions were projected, which she called the shadow of the living light. And it made me remember that thing with the clouds passing in front of me and how the backdrop is always this radiant, shining light. So this is from her book, The Symphony of the Harmony of Celestial Revelations. That was her name. Isn't that amazing? A Christian, abbess. And it was poems that she set to music. She wrote the music. It was for the nuns for their liturgy to sing, but she wrote all the music and all the words. And she attributed the words and the music, of course, to a divine source, not that it was her doing it. And in her poems, you see all of the things I was talking about: wisdom, Sophia, nature, creation, birthing, passion. So the first one is called the Antiphon for Divine Wisdom. Sophia, you of the whirling wings, circling, encompassing energy of God, you quicken the soul in your clasp. One wing soars in heaven, and one wing sweeps the earth, and the third flies all around us. Praise to Sophia, let all the earth praise her. And I'll just read one more of hers. This is called the Alleluia verse for the Virgin. Alleluia, light burst from your untouched womb like a flower on the farther side of death. The world tree is blossoming, two realms become one. So there's so much contained in that one little passage, creation, birth, interconnectedness, nature. It's really amazing, her work. And then the third word was love, and that's where we get to send it out into the world and just show our compassion and our offering of love in service. And I thought right away of two Buddhist bodhisattvas, Tara, that we sang about earlier, this bodhisattva of compassion, and especially compassion in action, and also Kuan Yin, who is the Eastern deity, Buddhist again, of mercy and compassion. And Kuan Yin actually means perceiving the sounds or cries of the world. So she hears everybody's suffering and responds to that call. So when this happens, when someone responds to what you happen to be feeling and suffering, then trust is created. And from this trust comes a really amazing acceptance. And I think when all those things are present, compassion, acceptance, trust, that's when we can step into grace. So really, grace is there for us at every moment if we'll open ourselves up to those things. So for this word, I chose Mechtilde of Magdeburg, who is another one of my favorite Christian mystics. She was a couple hundred years later. And at 12, she had an experience where she saw all things in God and God in all things, which if you've ever taken those enlightenment quizzes, it's one of the things, do you see God in all things? And she was a member of a German spiritual community known as the Beguines, who some say were the original first women's movement. And it was a result of the Catholic Church refusing to open any more nunneries, even though there were a lot of women who wanted to become nuns. So these women just decided, well, okay, then we'll just form our own communities, and lived in celibacy and same kind of vows that Catholic nuns take, and just formed their own communities and their own rituals, and it became a very, very powerful communities. And she later became a really influential nun and scholar and toured preaching, which was very, very unusual for a woman at that time. She wrote a book, again, very beautiful name, The Flowing Light of the Godhead. And that was revealing 14 years of her own revelations when she received an inspiration to do that. And I find her poetry really reminiscent of Rumi in a lot of different ways. And this encounter between the individual self and the universal self is depicted as a relationship of lovers, which Rumi often does. So here's one of her poems. I cannot dance, O Lord, unless you lead me. If you wish me to leap joyfully, let me see you dance and sing. Then I will leap into love, and from love into knowledge, and from knowledge into the harvest, that sweetest fruit beyond human sense. There I will stay with you, whirling. So it brings up these images of nature and of the whirling dervishes, of Rumi. Really, really beautiful. This is another one. A fish cannot drown in water. A bird does not fall in air. In the fire of its making, gold doesn't vanish. The fire brightens. Each creature God made must live in its own true nature. How could I resist my nature that lives for oneness with God? And in the preface of this book, that's what he was saying, that almost all of the authors in this book are people who have gone against societal norms and followed their own path. And often women, step out to do things that the world or their culture is telling them that they can't do. So that represents for us all this ability and capacity to do what we know is ours to do within, instead of following what somebody else is telling us we need to do. And I'll just read one more from here. It's called How the Soul Speaks to God. Lord, you are my lover, my longing, my flowing stream, my sun, and I am your reflection. Isn't that beautiful? So all of these words, all of this, thinking about the divine feminine, help us to find beauty and grace in every moment, in nature, in our interconnectedness with each other, in the capacity we have for birth and rebirth, in our capacity to give with compassion and loving service. So I offer that to you today as our kind of thing to think about for the rest of today and for the rest of the week, and maybe for the rest of your lives. How can you embody all those things and really embrace this divine feminine that is within all of us? So thanks for having me today again. I really appreciate it.